In today's episode, we aim to dive into the inner workings of the creator economy.
The creator economy will be a $500 billion economy by 2027. I think it is the number one priority now amongst marketeers and CMOs to say we need to lean into a creator-led approach when communicating with our potential consumers and users. TikTok is first and foremost a technology company. The algorithm that figures out what's relevant to each person is effectively breakthrough technology.
In the MENA region, what kind of content strategies they need to think of?
The platform is all about inspiring creativity and bringing joy. Let loose a little bit. Be vulnerable, be authentic, be day-to-day, be pertinent to the actual problem statements that a user might face on a regular basis, and leverage creators that are trusted in those communities as your voice. 50% plus of a marketing campaign's success is linked to the creative itself.
Welcome to Access Tomorrow, where we dive into the world of payments, innovation, and commerce. I'm your host, Layla Sarhan. In each episode, we'll explore commerce from various angles, from the viewpoint of small business owners to the wider perspective of financial institutions. We'll uncover what drives success and explore ideas and strategies that fuel growth. This podcast is brought to you by Visa. In today's episode, we aim to dive into the inner workings of the creator economy. We'll explore what it means for SMBs focused on growth and what Gen Z's contribution to this space has been. We can't do without discussing TikTok's pivotal role in this scene. And that's why we have the perfect guest for this conversation, Shant Oknayan. Shant Oknayan is the Vice President of Global Business Solutions at TikTok, where he looks after the Asian, Middle Eastern, African, and Oceanic markets. TikTok, as you may know, is a subsidiary of ByteDance. And before ByteDance, Shant worked at tech giants like Facebook and Google, building expertise in digital media, advertising, and business development. At Facebook, he helped grow the platform commercial presence in the MENA region. At Google, he led initiatives that impacted the digital advertising landscape, promoting growth and innovation. In addition to these roles, Shant has been an entrepreneur. He co-founded Glambox, the region's first subscription-based beauty e-commerce platform, which was acquired by Saudi Arabian investors in 2017. I'm thrilled about our conversation. Welcome to the show, Shant.
Thank you. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. So let's dive in. And I think I want to talk first about the creator economy, right? I think we're moving from more of an influencer to a creator economy, the way I see it. And I want to understand from your perspective, why does it matter today? I mean, what is really the economic impact of this creator economy? We look at creators as small businesses, but why does it matter today?
Great question. Because I think a lot of people underestimate what the creator economy actually is all about. So maybe we look at some numbers to kick things off, and then how different constituents, governments, businesses, creators are giving importance to it. So according to a Goldman Sachs study, the creator economy will be a $500 billion economy by 2027. So $500 billion economy is not something to shy away from. Today, there's probably about 50 million creators globally that make a living out of this. Now, how does that translate here in our region, in the Middle East specifically? We're looking at reaching about $1.5 billion in economic impact over the next few years. So again, not a small number. Now, this has obviously resonated both with governments and increasingly with businesses. So especially here in our region, we've seen the likes of the Dubai creative strategy come into play, where they're saying we're going to double the number of jobs in the creative industry, or double the number of companies in the creative industry, and also double the GDP contribution of the creative industries to the overall economy. 140,000 jobs in the next few years around creative and creators. Important for the Saudi 2030 vision as well, as we know well, as a way of diversifying the economy and creating a knowledge economy of sorts. And businesses are leaning into it as well, as a way of leveraging creators to tell their stories. In fact, I think it is the number one priority now amongst marketeers and CMOs to say we need to lean into a creator-led approach when when communicating with our potential consumers and users. So it is definitely a sizable opportunity and growing very fast. So 500 billion in a few years' time, doubling from where we are today. What we've seen is, to your point, this shift from influencer to creator. An influencer solves for popularity.
Yes.
A creator solves for passion. And everybody has a passion, right, in life, maybe a number of passions, and therefore anybody can become a creator if they're willing to share that passion with a wider audience. And platforms like ours lean in very heavily into something like that.
And so you talked about the impact on businesses. When you think of maybe a bit more of the traditional sectors and traditional businesses, and we know we always put financial services into that section of business. How do you see financial services actually leaning in on the creator economy and a platform like TikTok?
Increasingly bigger lean-ins, not only from financial services, but from all businesses. I'll give you a few examples, and then we'll talk about how they've been approaching this. Whether it is the likes of a government entity like Ministry of Culture in Saudi, thinking about building a talent program around Saudi culture and Saudi music. And so we built together with them and Anghami a program called The Sound of Saudi, where they could effectively have people audition to become the next Saudi music talent.
Audition on TikTok.
Audition on TikTok.
Okay.
26,000 auditions. Wow. 1.3 million votes towards those auditions. 500 million video views. So you can see the scale of this is starting to be very impactful. So that's maybe an example of how we're helping shift a whole culture onto TikTok. We've seen small and medium businesses lean in very heavily into a platform like TikTok. An example that comes to mind is Halal Cacao, which is a Kuwaiti confectionery brand. Okay. Mom and pop shop type of business. They started creating very authentic content on TikTok, telling their story, a day in the life of, very unplugged content, which we'll deep dive into that being kind of the essence of all of this. They drove 80,000 new customers on their app as a result of that, right? They've seen a 60x increase in their sales orders. And this was a Kuwaiti-based company that is now thinking of going international because as a result of their TikTok endeavors, they've seen orders come in from across the region and also from Europe. And then in the financial services sector, we're seeing a very strong community of both creators and users leaning into what we call FinTalk, the community around finance and financial literacy. You'll appreciate that we don't get taught in school how to think about money, how to manage our money. And so especially the newer generations are going to their favorite creators, financial creators, FinTalk creators, to learn what is an APR, what is a fixed versus variable mortgage, and things of the sort. It's not financial advice, but it's financial literacy. And financial institutions are leaning into that community of FinTalkers. So I'll give you an example of a large bank in Turkey, Deniz Bank, that was looking at propelling its digital banking proposition. And they worked with 3 creators that are well known in the FinTalk community to show how the app works. Okay. And in the month where that campaign was active, 26% of all net new customers to the digital bank were through that TikTok campaign led by those 3 creators, right? So you're seeing that whether it's big government kind of agendas or SMBs or even financial services traditionally seen as maybe, is something like a digital marketing campaign leveraging creators really effective for me? They're all leaning in and seeing some great results come through.
So let's talk a little bit more about the creator specifically and how they make money, right? So at Visa, we've created this Visa Get Paid program, which is a global program. We actually launched it in the Middle East as well, where we bring in creators to talk to creators and help them understand how they monetize. So successful creators who have millions and millions of views. I mean, you talked a little bit about those numbers. And they're looking for new ways to make money, to earn money. So what are you excited about right now? And how does a platform like TikTok actually help them earn more?
So there's different avenues for a creator to effectively start monetizing their passion. I think the most explicit one, or the one that we're all aware of, is brand partnerships, right?
Yeah.
We mentioned the case of Dennis Bank and many other brands or businesses having a creator do marketing on their behalf. So a brand partnership, a brand endorsement is one avenue. What we're also seeing or starting to do, and other platforms have done this as well in the past, is showing ads against some premium content, right, from an established, well-known creator, and doing a revenue share on some of that advertising. We're seeing also peer-to-peer monetization happen. So a live streaming that a creator might do, and they'll get virtual tokens that consumers may want to be gifting to them because they enjoy their content. So that's also become a very interesting business model for a lot of creators. So the monetization models are evolving. There's multiple ways for creators to start making a living out of their passion. Now, what kind of support do we provide beyond payment solutions or monetization models? To your point, similar to the program that you launched, how do we help creators really take their passion to the next level, their storytelling to the next level? So we've got programs like the Creator Hub, that is effectively a talent academy that helps creators hone their craft and their art. We have a platform called the TikTok Creator Marketplace that effectively matches creators with brands, right? So it's almost like a creator directory for brands to leverage to say, I'm looking for a creator that might resonate with these types of communities. They send them a brief, and they can get response to those briefs from different creators, and they strike a partnership. So we're trying to provide a kind of different support mechanisms, whether it's on education, evangelization, or matchmaking of sorts, through technology, through platforms like our Creator Marketplace, for creators then to monetize through brand partnerships, revenue share, or even peer-to-peer kind of virtual tokens on live streaming.
So you mentioned this, and it was one of the things I wanted to discuss with you. So we see many of these transactions are what we call micro transactions, right? Like they're tiny transactions, many transactions that are happening on the platform. You talked about those tokens, virtual tokens to pay them. What else? What are the new payment solutions you're thinking of so that you help those creators actually manage those microtransactions, but also support them in the future?
I mean, the payment ecosystem is quite evolved already. So there's a lot of opportunities to leverage what's already there, whether it's the more traditional bank transfers that might happen, but for the volume of micro amounts that we're talking, that might not be suitable. There's obviously DeFi solutions that are coming up, right? Simple credit card transactions that obviously are probably the go-to. So we're kind of staying abreast of what the community of financial services and payment solutions that Visa is part of is building to ensure that there's different avenues for creators to effectively get paid.
I think it's about providing them with the best way to pay, but also to be paid.
As seamless as possible, as risk-free as possible, right?
Of course.
And so we're excited to see what the industry is going to keep building that we can then also leverage as a platform.
It's definitely an area we're looking at it very, very closely because of that volume of microtransactions. And like you said, it has to be seamless, secure, and trusted, and going to the right person at the right time. And I think for many of these creators, it's also about managing their working capital, right?
Absolutely.
It's for many of them, it's their only source of income as
Yes,
well.
yes,
So,
yes.
but it's great to see so many businesses making money. I want to shift to Gen Z. I think so. Many times we associate TikTok with Gen Z. I've heard you many times saying that actually it's might not be 100% true. I have a Gen Z and a Gen Alpha at home. The Gen Alpha is actually the creator in the family
Okay.
on the platform. But what we're seeing that they're changing the media landscape quite fast. This generation. So how has TikTok changed over time to actually keep up with this particular group habits and changing habits?
So one of the myths is that TikTok is a Gen Z platform only. That might have been the case a while back, right? Where the most, let's say, explicit outlets of creativity were dancing and singing, and Gen Zs are really value self-expression from that perspective. And that's probably the easiest avenue to start. But it's evolved over time. It's really become a platform of self-expression that transcends generations, right? We were speaking earlier of how even some of the older generations are finding their third chapter in life and embracing their passions of saying, I've always wanted to cook. And so let me start creating content around that. Or I've always wanted to be a comedian, and let me use this platform to start sharing some of my comedic skits, right? So the audience is now, multi-generational, and the creators are also multi-generational. But if we were to speak about Gen Z specifically, there's probably three lens that I would look at that under. And the first is, how do Gen Zs think about content creation and consumption? The second is, how do Gen Zs think, what are their purchasing behaviors? Yeah. And then the third is Gen Zs in the workplace, and what are the values and behaviors that matter for that generation? So if we think about content creation and consumption, we spoke about how self-expression is kind of core to the essence of Gen Z. Authentic, genuine, raw, vulnerable type of content, as opposed to curated, aspirational, polished type of content. And so we're seeing them not only lean into consuming that type of content, but creating that. In fact, I'd almost call Gen Zs prosumers. They produce content, but they also consume it. Whereas older generations might have been a little bit more skewed towards consumption as opposed to creation. So some really kind of self-expression and creativity is at the core of how Gen Zs think about content. But then that entertaining, engaging, exciting, educational content of self-expression that Gen Zs are doing also leads to a shift in their purchasing behaviors. Yeah. So on a broader level, we've seen e-commerce evolve from what it's been over the last 15 years. And we're seeing that in certain pockets in the East that I can speak about, whereby it's no longer just about transactional needs and functional needs, right? I need this product, I need it cheap, and I need it quickly. But Gen Zs are more and more putting an emphasis on their experiential needs, their emotional needs being covered, yes, also when it comes to online shopping. And a platform like ours that is all about creativity and entertainment lends itself very well then to lead to these experiential led type of commercial outcomes. So what we're seeing is content that leads to commerce. And brands that are leaning into this, let me entertain and educate first about what products I have to offer, are seeing transactions as a byproduct then of resonating with Gen Zs. So we call this the concept of shoppertainment.
Okay.
Right? Entertainment that leads to shopping outcomes.
Okay.
And if we were to think about that in the physical world, it's why we go to malls, right?
Yes.
We go there, we window shop, it's experiential. We're not going there just to potentially buy something and leave the mall. And people want that experience, especially Gen Zs want that experience online as well, because that's where they spend a lot of their time. The and we'll talk shop shoppertainment as maybe a future avenue of growth for businesses.
Okay.
I'm sure you've probably got a question,
of course,
brewing around that. But then Gen Z's in the workplace as well. I get asked from our business partners a lot of questions around, you're a platform that resonates very well with Gen Zs, and you've probably got a team that is potentially on the younger side as well from that perspective. So what are the behaviors, what are the values, what are the principles by which Gen Zs flourish and are successful in the workplace? So we did a study with Egon Zehnder a few years back, where we brought CEOs of companies together with Gen Zs in the companies to kind of break the barrier between what could be considered a generational barrier. To have a very open conversation, we called it the culture duets, to learn from one another. Think of it as mentoring, which we all know from someone who has more experience to someone who has less experience, but also reverse mentoring, right? CEOs leaning in with curiosity to say, tell me a little bit more about what you care about and what my consumers and audiences might care about to future-proof the business. And there's a few aha moments that came out of that. Okay. I'll leave you with two. The older generations will look at their careers as one 20-year career. The newer generations are thinking of 21-year careers, right? They want multiple experiences in the workplace. They don't want to just think of their career progression as linear. And so every 12 to 18 months, they're saying, what's new? And not because they're an expert in what they're doing. And I think that's a misconception and that many of us older generations might have. It's like, oh, you've just started this. What do you mean you want to do something different? It's because they want a multifaceted view to their career growth. So that's one aha moment. The other is the difference between feeling valued versus validated. Validation is, I think, something that our performance processes, etc., put a lot of emphasis on. You got this promo, you got this rating, well done on this. Very explicit, but superficial in terms of what value might bring to the person. Newer generations are looking to be valued. They want to be coached. They want to have a chair at the table, not because they have experience and expertise that the older generations might not have, but they might have a fresh perspective. And so they want to be valued from that perspective, right? They want to be able to contribute as well to the workplace. So these are just two elements of how Gen Zs are how they think about the workplace and the values and the principles that they have there. But a lot of interesting dynamics as we think about this newer generation.
And has this influenced the culture at TikTok?
I would like to think so, yes. Right? And maybe you can ask my team offline. But there's a few things that we've begun doing over time as a way of creating value versus validation, or 21-year careers versus 120-year careers. We do intentional reorgs, right? Every 12 to 18 months as a way of keeping people uncomfortably excited in what they're doing, and that growth mindset of let me roll up my sleeves and try something new. Valued in terms of having listening tours or being very transparent on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis on what's brewing, what's top of mind for me, right? Sharing that across the wider organization and being very receptive to say, oh, have you thought about it this way or that way? So there's a few things that we do. There's a program that many tech companies do, which are hackathons, right? Just, hey, what are the business problems that you think we should be solving, and what are some crazy ideas that you have out there, right? And carte blanche to present that over a 48-hour period. We'll look at it, we'll vote on it, and if everybody agrees that this is an exciting opportunity, let's double down on that and bring it to life. So there's a few programs that we do that way.
And I can imagine with a platform that is growing so fast, you need to have this kind of agility.
Absolutely.
How many users on TikTok globally now?
Billion plus.
Okay.
Billion plus. So the reach is there, a huge audience, and you can imagine that when it's those types of numbers, it really does transcend generations.
True.
But interesting also the relevance of the platform. On average, people consume a movie's length worth of content on the platform.
Every day.
Every day. And this is content that resonates with them, right? They're not doing it from a lean back perspective or dual screening or just scrolling for the sake of scrolling. They don't, you check social media, you check email, you check your messages, but you watch TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's a lean in type of approach.
Yeah, I mean, when I talk about Gen Z, it's also the technology that is behind this TikTok, right? When your For You page is quite amazing how sticky it is. Can you talk a little bit about what's the tech behind that For You page? Or For You feed?
So for those who may not know, I think TikTok is first and foremost a technology company. And the algorithm that figures out what's relevant to each person is effectively a breakthrough technology. And maybe we take a step back as to what is the paradigm shift that we've seen in digital media that has led to where TikTok is today. And so from my perspective, there's been 4 phases around digital content creation and consumption. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was the portals. Right, you consumed content based on what your favorite website, the editor there decided would be pertinent to you or relevant to you. So it was a one-to-many type of conversation. It was a one-way, right? An editor, subject matter expert, decided that this was the car review they were going to do, and if you're a car enthusiast, you went to the car section, or these were the financial news updates that they would provide in the finance section. So that was known as the context graph. You saw content based on the context you were interested in. The first shift then from that happened with the advent of search engines, where the problem statement there was, well, sometimes people are actively looking for information, not just waiting for an editor to have a hypothesis as to this might be relevant for my audiences. And therefore, search engines came to play. And the knowledge graph. I'm going to organize information based on what people might be explicitly looking for. The evolution from that was social media, the social graph. Because in the real world, we might not always know what we're looking for. How do we discover something new? We usually through word of mouth.
Yeah, we ask our friends,
Friends and family, right? And so social media companies came along and said, we're going to invent digital word of mouth. We're going to start organizing information based on your social circles. What is it that they're sharing? That's how you're going to start discovering content. And it also started becoming a two-way conversation, because it was no longer an editor or a search engine showing you the content, but you start acting as a friend and family to someone else as well, in terms of saying, I like this or I like that. So it started becoming a few-to-few type of conversation. We're now arguably in kind of the 4th phase. We went from context graph to knowledge graph to social graph in terms of how information is created and organized, to what we call the content graph. And the algorithm technology plays a very big role in that. I don't necessarily care what you're explicitly looking for, searching for. I don't really need to know who your friends and family are or who you are even as a person, demographics. The algorithm is smart enough to figure out your personas. What are your behaviors? What are your interests, regardless of who you are? I'm a male I'm not going to give my age, right, of a certain age, but that's my demographics. But what's more interesting is my personas. I like dad jokes. We spoke about that earlier. I'm a petrolhead. I love cars. I'm discovering content that I didn't know that I liked around, watch restorations. And therefore, a person can have multiple personas. And the algorithm, through the signals of consumption, how long you've watched the video, whether you engaged and interacted with the video, did you forward, did you share it, did you start creating content that was similar to that, then figures out that that might be a piece of content, or on a larger scale, a community
That you like.
You might like reading, and therefore the book talk community, which is huge, by the way, might be very relevant for you. And therefore starts organizing information that way. Hence, the movie's length worth of consumption on the platform, because you can be multiple personas in any given session on a platform like TikTok.
So you talked about the tech, about shoppertainment, which is a super interesting concept. I want to bring it down to businesses.
Yes.
I mean, and what does it really mean for businesses globally, but also in the MENA region? What kind of content strategies they need to think of?
Yes. Probably the question I get asked the most when having conversations with our business partners, because everyone is genuinely curious about TikTok, and they appreciate that it is not that it is something that they should be considering. And the question is, how should I think about it? Yeah. And therefore, I introduced the concept of creative bravery. The platform is all about inspiring creativity and bringing joy. It's all about authentic, genuine, vulnerable, raw type of content. Most brands find that challenging. Find it challenging to let loose of potentially their brand guidelines. I'm not saying completely dismiss them, but kind of expand those guardrails a little bit, or trust someone to tell their story on their behalf, like a creator. Like, no, this is my brand principle. These are my brand guidelines, and
how you should talk.
This is how we should present ourselves. But that might resonate in terms of how you see your brand. It's not necessarily how your consumers see your brand. And therefore, why not make it a two-way conversation? Why not lean into the creators and the communities to tell your story on your behalf? And so creative bravery is this concept of let loose a little bit. Be vulnerable, be authentic, be day-to-day, be pertinent to the actual problem statements that a user might face on a regular basis, and leverage creators that are trusted in those communities as your voice, as your storyteller. So leaning into curiosity, leaning into vulnerability, and to connect with the community is what creative bravery is. And by the way, there's numbers to prove that this works, right? What we've seen is that when brands lean into this creative bravery and leverage the creator to tell their story or be a little bit more vulnerable, it increases trust with their consumers. In fact, 24% lift in brand trust on average, when a consumer sees a piece of marketing that is very TikTok-y on TikTok versus if it's just taking a TV commercial and putting it on the platform. But it also creates a stronger bond. So a 33% of people that we surveyed, when they see a brand leaning in with a more TikTok-y approach to their marketing, actually find that that brand is a good fit to their persona. So it's starting to break barriers of, this is a brand trying to sell something to me, whereas this is a brand that is part of my community, part of my interest, part of my persona. So at the highest level, I would advocate for creative bravery. And we've seen, I mentioned a few examples earlier of brands do well when it comes to letting loose and embracing creative bravery. I'll give you a few other examples as well that are creator-led. So Abu Dhabi Department of Culture and Tourism, they wanted to present the Emirate as a summer destination, right? And they could have put out a very polished marketing collateral, come to Yas Island, or there's this to do, that to do. Instead, they said, you know what, let's leverage a creator and the creator is not your local Habibi. That's who she is. This is an expat who lives here in the Emirates, and represents what many of us effectively are. And we call this place home, but we maybe have a different way of looking at it. To talk about that, to actually present Abu Dhabi as a summer destination, and they saw some phenomenal results. I'm just looking down here. On average, the video or the view through rate, so people actually watching and engaging with the video as opposed to just skipping through it, was 125% higher than benchmark, right? And over 20 million people were reached as a result of that creator-led campaign. Another one is close-up toothpastes, right? In Egypt, they wanted to resonate from a more kind of comedic angle. They worked with a few TikTokers who make comedy their passion on the platform in Egypt. They saw a 3.7% uplift in purchase intent as a result of these creators telling their story, telling the brand story, but with their tone of voice. So creative bravery is not just a concept of saying this is how you should present yourself on the platform because these are the principles by which the platform operates. It actually has strong business results as well when brands lean into that concept.
And so you talked about brand partnerships, and I think that the two examples you just gave, a little bit different. It feels like a brand created a creator and a brand used existing creators. And you also mentioned brand partnerships are important for creators to make money, right? So what are brands actually looking for? And what kind of, what should a creator showcase so that they can appeal to a specific brand?
What we advocate with creators is to continue solving first and foremost for their passion, not popularity. Because or else they won't resonate with their audiences. So what we advocate to brands is not to start shaping a creator according to their brand guidelines, but it's actually to say, here's my problem statement. Here's what I'm trying to achieve. What do you think? And let loose the creator to tell that story with their tone of voice in the communities that are first and foremost focused on the creator, not on the brand. So we don't want this to be yet another kind of transaction, right? Hey, a brand finds a number of creators they want to work with, and creator, I need you to say this, I want it to be scripted. What we actually say is ditch the script, right? Give them the brief as to what you want to achieve, what is the desired outcome, but the output needs to be creator-led.
Okay.
And the creator will then find the right hook for their audiences that might resonate with that brand, right? And again, we've seen through data, through surveys, etc., that works. When you're ditching the script, 47% of audiences say that the creator comes across more authentic, so the bond is stronger. When you're allowing the creator to find the hook as opposed to telling them what the hook should be, the view-throughs are 26% longer. And when you are, as a brand, leveraging a creator because of the community that they resonate with, again, 76% of audiences surveys actually like it that the brand has integrated with the community. So is looking at an interaction as opposed to a one-way communication of here's our brand, here's what we stand for, whether you like it or not. So there is this, again, paradigm shift of saying, be a co-pilot of your brand, of the marketing messages that you put on our platform. Don't be prescriptive and directive, because you might actually alienate the consumers you're trying to get in front of.
Yes. And what is TikTok actually doing to keep businesses excited about the platform?
So there's a few things that we've begun making available to businesses from a creative perspective. Because creative bravery, fantastic. Yes, I'll lean into it as a concept. How do I even begin that journey? So there's a whole toolkit that we have launched and that we continue honing around the full kind of creative process, the creative value chain, from how do you think about ideation of creative? What about the production of that creative? And then how do you optimize and report against whether that creative worked? Because by the way, 50% plus of a marketing campaign's success is linked to the creative itself. And we're a platform where creativity is effectively the essence. So creative tools like we have a hub called the Creative Center, a great way for marketeers to be inspired as to, okay, what are different angles I could take for my brand to live on the platform. So think of it from a creative ideation perspective. What are the latest trends? What's the zeitgeist, right? What's culturally relevant right now that I can lean into without making it forced, right? It needs to come across authentic. But those are effectively the campaigns that tend to go viral, right? We have a creative assistant, which is effectively a technology, right? That you can prompt to say, this is the brief that I'm looking for. These are the audiences I'm trying to get in front of, and it'll write a whole script for you.
Okay.
Right? So it actually
kind
starts...
of a Gen AI tool.
Something along those lines of, it's going to generate a script for you. And then how do you actually produce the video against that script? We've got a video editor that enables you to do that directly on the mobile phone. We've got a sister app, part of the family of apps and services, called CapCut, which is probably the tool of reference for mobile video creators to be able to build the volume of creative that one is looking for. Because again, if you're a consumer of TikTok, you see the same piece of content 3 times, you're going to get bored, right? There's going to be creative fatigue. And therefore, as a brand, you can't just put one creative asset there and hope that it's going to work at all times. You need to keep that refresh. And then we've got platforms like we mentioned, the Creator Marketplace. So, okay, instead of you just building a piece of content to put on the platform, why don't you leverage a creator or a whole suite of creators to tell your story and build that content on your behalf? Or a Creative Exchange. We have another platform called the Creative Exchange, which is, again, a directory of small creative boutiques that can help TikTokify your video content, right? And start building a library of content on your behalf. And the most pragmatic thing that I've seen resonate with a few of our brand partners is what I call the Gen Z Lab, which is a fancy way of saying, hire a few folks, maybe even a few interns from, the biggest marketing schools, right? Universities. Give them a mobile phone and say, I want 100 pieces of content from you at the end of each week. No kind of guidelines on what exactly you're solving for. At the end of the week, we'll look at that content library, see if it's not breaking anything in terms of brand guidelines, right? But expanding those brand guidelines a little bit and organically putting it on the platform.
Okay.
And if the algorithm thinks that it's relevant content, guess what? It's going to start, there's going to be a virality around it. And then you can put marketing dollars against that because you've proven that piece of content actually resonates with your audiences.
Yeah.
So great also from an ROI perspective, for all of those CFOs that are listening to this, the CMO is no longer kind of spraying and praying that, oh, I've done this marketing campaign, I've spent so much money on it, there's a media plan, let me put it out and fingers crossed it achieves results. It will achieve the desired results. You can organically put the content there, let the algorithm work its magic in terms of this seems to be resonating and it's relevant, and then boost that or promote that with marketing spend.
What I love about this is that it's not only about big brands. It also appeals to small business. So small businesses now have the power of media agencies, big marketing departments to be able to be relevant on such a powerful platform.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to, I look at TikTok, it's a global phenomenon. Visa is a global organization. But we always say in the payment world, payment is very local.
Mm-hmm.
Payment is local. Visa is global, but payment is very local. And I would imagine in the TikTok world, you have to stay also locally relevant, right? So what have you changed, I would say, maybe in this MENA region, in your business model, or the way you approach things to fit the region, culture, and commerce as well?
So I think similar to Visa, there are global principles, and then I guess local execution of those principles, locally nuanced execution. So let me maybe start with globally, what does TikTok represent, or what does it want to be? It's three things: a canvas, a bridge, and a window. A canvas of self-expression. We spoke about that, right? The prosumer, especially amongst Gen Z, very apt at creating content and having this as a canvas of self-expression. It is a window of discovery. So when you're consuming content, you're discovering new people, new places, new ideas, new products, going down to maybe the more commercial side of things. And they bridge, because ultimately it's actually connecting people and building communities around certain topics. We alluded to concepts like book talk, which is probably the biggest book club in the world, right? That has revived the art of reading, right? Or concepts like beauty talk, or for those who are clean freaks like myself, clean talk, right? The latest hacks on how to keep a house clean with day-to-day products that you might have in the house, vinegar and things of the sort. So globally, those principles apply and transcend borders. A canvas, a window, a bridge. How that then translates locally, there's a few elements to it. In terms of our community guidelines, how we ensure that they're locally relevant, because a piece of content might resonate in Brazil, might not resonate in Kuwait, right? And therefore, how do you ensure that it is fitting kind of the cultural norms and guidelines that are acceptable? But also, how do we start ensuring that the local content ecosystem is flourishing, right? So creators are building more and more content on the platform. So think of users becoming creators as well, prosumers. And anecdotally, countries in our region are actually amongst the highest creators of content per user.
Okay.
Right? The UAE is the third largest in terms of content created per user, and Kuwait is the fourth largest. So it is a community globally.
Wow. Okay.
So there is a very healthy content creation ecosystem happening here. But then we're also partnering with publishers, content creators who have been doing this as a business for years and decades. We announced just recently a few things in Saudi Arabia with partners like Telfaz, where we built a whole Saudi series around branded content, or U-Turn, another big content publisher and video creator in Saudi Arabia, where during Ramadan there's a series called the Daily Fazwir, right?
Okay.
So we're starting to see publishers, so companies whose business model is to build content, also lean into to ensure that the local content ecosystem is relevant and pertinent to our user base. But we're not stopping there. We also want to ensure others start embarking on the journey of understanding how to build creative and how to be creative on the platform. So we announced in Qatar a few weeks ago a creative studio for brands to start going through the journey of how do you build creative that resonates with consumers on TikTok. We've got a creator hub we alluded to earlier. So an academy, effectively, a talent academy for the next generation creators, right? Learning from more established ones. But again, not stopping there, right? We understand that the creator economy is big and it's going to continue growing. How do we create employment opportunities around that?
Okay.
So just a few weeks ago, we announced a partnership with Injaz in Saudi Arabia to say, how are we going to enable 2 million Saudi youth around thinking about their career, what are the different paths that they can take on, etc. So effectively acting almost like a vocation center for next generation professionals on how to think about their career. So you can see that there's some global principles as to what the platform represents. And then there's local executions, whether it's from how are we ensuring the content ecosystem is flourishing, or how are we enabling brands to lean into this creative narrative, or how are we enabling the youth to think about employment and career prospects, etc. These are all locally led programs.
And in the process of building those communities that are locally relevant, and I know you have quite a vast geography that you're covering, do you see something different in the MENA region as compared to the rest of the world?
Not as an outcome.
Okay.
So it's not as if something here is happening that hasn't happened anywhere else. But there are some great success stories that, again, transcend the MENA borders. There's Shahrazad's Cuisine. She is a TikTok creator, used to be a banker, now has become a baker, right? Okay. That started off as maybe a locally relevant story and is now becoming something a lot bigger. We've seen the Hadban twins, Emirati brothers, who have become fashion icons. Again, not just in our part of the world, but starting to transcend borders and kind of take MENA to the world. Dr. Jana is another example of someone who started creating on TikTok. She's a psychologist, education psychologist, etc. And now she's got her own TV show as a result. So these are all, I think, manifestations of things that we've seen in other parts of the world as well, but they're great, regional stories of some of the creators here starting to transcend borders.
Shant, this was really amazing and very informative. I want to end with this pivot question that we always ask our guest. I mean, you've had a fantastic career. It would be great if you can share a pivotal moment in your career, something that changed your goals or affected your leadership style, or anything you would like to share that people who are listening and watching can benefit from.
So, in the spirit of being vulnerable, right? I have two children. A 10-year-old. Gen Alpha, Gen Alpha at this stage. A 10-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. My 10-year-old daughter has a rare genetic disorder, and therefore has additional needs. And that has taught me a lot. She has taught me a lot. She has taught me a lot in terms of just her sheer determination, her willingness to break glass ceilings, and just a positive mindset to all challenges that get thrown your way. So I think that's taught me to have a protagonist mindset in everything that I do, right? To be kind of master of my own destiny and never to take no for an answer, right? But it's also given me probably a broader perspective that if someone like her can overcome her challenges and continue being a better version of herself, then why can't I? Yeah. It also, I hope, has made me a little bit more empathetic, right? Because diversity and inclusion hits home personally for me. And therefore, how do you make sure that everybody has not only a seat at the table, but a voice at the table? And that's something that has been pivotal in my career.
Oh, this is amazing, Shant. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for listening.
I want to thank you for all of the valuable insights you gave us today. I think you inspired a lot, creators and hopefully businesses and financial services institutions and fintechs to take advantage of this very powerful platform called TikTok. Thank you, Shant.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. We're committed to providing you with fresh and bold insights from our region, so don't miss our next episode. Until then, stay informed, stay inspired, and always strive to stay ahead of tomorrow. Thank you once again for watching and listening to Access Tomorrow, brought to you by Visa.